Hello and welcome to the channel. Today what we're going to talk about is using directional DLP policies inside of the Power Platform. Let's go. So let's talk a little bit about why this episode is important. This actually was another real world scenario that came in from a customer this past week. And so naturally Power Platform connectors will not elevate someone's permissions when they are used. As a result, like if you've got read-only permissions to a data source, you can't then use the connector to elevate those permissions to be, say, write privileges. And for this specific customer, they were interested in using the Azure AD connector, but they only wanted to use it in a read-only fashion, as opposed to having too much write, where you could go ahead and write data, update data, etc. And so for some organizations, they feel like that principle alone isn't enough. And as a result, we're looking for a little bit more control. Now, historically, DLP policies were governed at the connector level. So it was one of those all or nothing situations. You couldn't sort of read from Twitter, but not write. It was all or nothing. And same thing with Azure Active Directory. If you wanted to read, you couldn't allow reads and therefore prevent writes. But there's a fairly new feature. It's been out for a little while. It's just something I haven't sort of spent time exploring. And that's that we can now go ahead and govern at the individual action level. So we can go ahead and enable read actions that and subsequently prevent the write actions from actually being used as well. And so that gives customers even more confidence around what people can and cannot do, even outside of their core permissions that they have against that particular data source. And so we're going to get into a demo. I'm going to show you this with Azure AD just because it's a real world scenario, and just explain how we can go ahead and use this type of model. As you can see on screen, we've got create operations or create actions that have been disabled. And then we've got read operations that are still permitted. And I'm going to show you the behavior of these settings and what does that look like from a maker experience when they go ahead and try to use any of these actions. Okay, so I'm logged into the Power Platform Admin Center, admin.powerplatform.microsoft.com. Now, in order to go ahead and do this, you're going to need to have some sort of administrative privileges, whether that's environment admin, Power Platform admin, or tenant admin. And what I've gone ahead and done is I already have a DLP policy. So if I click on policies, data policies, I already have one for this environment that I want to restrict the operations of the Azure AD connector itself. And this can be applied to multiple environments, it can be applied to the entire tenant. For my scenario, just so I don't mess with other people's work, I've just restricted this to my own environment that I've created previously. So I've gone ahead and I've created a DLP policy. I've broken out my various connectors into business and non-business. So if we click on business, we're going to see a lot of the Microsoft connectors and the business related connectors that I would want my users to go ahead and use. Obviously, you can sort of rearrange these as you see fit. If there's specific connectors you want to flat out block, you're welcome to go ahead and do that as well. Now what we're going to do is we're going to find my Azure AD connector right here. And when we select it, what we can do is open up this other menu here by clicking on the ellipsis. And so we have the option to move it to non-business. Well, we don't want to do that. We don't want to block it. But what we want to do is configure the connector. And so we've got connector endpoints. I think I'll save that for another video. I should really do a video on that. That's a really cool feature. And then we're also going to talk just about connector actions. This is where we want to be for today's video. So this was that screenshot that I had shown earlier in the slides itself. And as you can see here, like I can just simply toggle on and off the action and its behavior that I want it to have. Now this is also pretty important as well. At the bottom here, we can choose what we want to do with new actions. So for example, like with this connector, there could be a new operation that's created. Maybe it's like create service principal. And then based on these settings, it will either be enabled or disabled. And so that you have a choice as to what you want to do here. allow any new actions just so that you're not taking things away from your users, or block because you don't want someone to inadvertently use something that they shouldn't be using in your organization. But what I would say is this now puts the onus on you to be responsive to those needs and to make sure that you are routinely keeping up to date with the connectors and the various actions so that you don't have users that are blocked from driving more value for your business. But anyways, this is how we would go ahead and configure all of the options. As discussed earlier, I've got the read options already set up. The write options and update options, I've gone ahead and disabled those. So this is already saved. You would just typically go through the save wizard, make sure that that's saved and that you've updated the policy. And then generally pretty quickly, just it should be applied pretty much right away. And that would subsequently sort of be imposed against your users. The other thing I would say is that if you're new on your Power Platform journey, it is always better to get ahead of these things. It's way more difficult to take things away than it is to have it sort of upfront governed and blocked. And so I would say, this is something that you really want to stay on top of, because if you don't, you're going to run into issues downstream where you might be, say, breaking someone's flow or breaking someone's app because now you've applied a specific policy itself. Okay, so that's the admin experience. Let's now pivot over to the user experience. So I'm now in the Flow Maker portal, or Power Automate Maker portal, and I can still go ahead and find this specific connector. And when I do find that connector, I'm going to see all of the operations that do exist for that connector. So they're not hidden. They're still exposed for people to see. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run this first, and then we'll go ahead and add a write operation, and then we'll see a different outcome. Here, we're just going to go ahead and get the members for an Azure AD group. So this is a read operation. I can go ahead and kick off this flow, and it's going to be successful, and it will return data because I had previously said that this specific action was enabled and can be used by my makers in the environment that I had specified before. Okay, so that's cool. Life's good from that perspective. Now, let's go ahead, let's add another action. And this time we're going to try to create a user, right? So we're going to say this account's enabled. When I go ahead and I try to save, even before I try to save this flow, look what happened. We've got flow checker lighting up and basically saying this operation violates a specific data policy, which is cool, and then basically saying that this has been restricted. Now, what's pretty cool is that there's now like a PowerShell that admins can run to be able to update this specific messaging here. So you could go ahead and point the that link, that click here, to say a site on your intranet, outline what your policies are. In addition, you can naturally go ahead and provide an email address if you wanted to go ahead and follow up with the administrator saying, hey, I need to go ahead and use it. This is my business case, and this is why I need to be able to have this type of action. Then they can go figure out what is the best solution for you. Maybe it is a legitimate need and it's harmless, so they'll go ahead and open that up. Maybe they create another environment and then have looser restrictions in that environment and give you access as well. So this is a really powerful new feature. It's been asked for quite some time, so it's awesome to see that this is available and just really gives admins more control. And I think the benefit for users is that it should give you additional functionality that you previously wouldn't have had because there was too much risk associated with just enabling it for some scenarios. And so as a result, everything was blocked. So awesome to see this type of functionality found in the Power Platform. All right, so that concludes another episode on the channel. Hope you enjoyed it. If you're not following me on Twitter, go ahead and find me at Weare. Obviously, you're on YouTube. Appreciate that. But go ahead, provide a like, subscribe, comments are always welcome. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week on the channel. Take care.